Welcome to Body Blueprints. Nothing completes a physique like a wide set of shoulders. Today we're going to be breaking down everything you need to know to add inches to your frame.
There are a few non-negotiables when it comes to growing a wide set of shoulders. One of the key pieces doesn't even relate to shoulder size, but can make all the difference. We'll get into that later in the video, but firstly, we're going to get into the exercises you should be doing to add inches to your frame. The deltoids are divided into three heads. The anterior, which is the front, the medial, which is the side, and the posterior, which is the rear. We can focus on these either collectively through compound movements or individually using isolation movements. A compound lift is where multiple muscles and joints will work together to create the movement. In this example of the military press, my shoulder and tricep muscles are active and my shoulder and elbow joints are moving. An isolation exercise is a single joint movement. In this case, my shoulder joint is active alone. By doing so, I'm able to isolate my side delt as the only muscle working to perform the lift. For maximum shoulder development, we need to work all three heads and ensure that we are putting them under tension using heavy weight loads. This is where our compound movements will come into play. Specifically for wide delts, shoulder pressing movements. Here are two compound lifts that you can add to your training plan to increase the mass throughout all three sections of your delts. The first mass builder for the delts we're looking at is the military press. All three heads of the deltoids are working here, developing the whole shoulder. Your triceps will also engage as a byproduct. For the military press, start with your feet square at shoulder width. You might often see people performing the lift with one foot in front like shown here, but avoid this as it will reduce stability and promote imbalances. Ensure you keep them square to optimize your lift. Keep your elbows tight to the ribs and the bar at the clavicle for your start point. Make sure you drive through and have the bar finish directly above your head at the top. Avoid leaning back and do not press forward in front of your head. This would cause a curved spine, putting it in a vulnerable position, and as a result, increasing the risk of injury. You want to finish the rep with your biceps next to your ears. At this point, take an inhalation which will fill the diaphragm with air, helping you stay tight for your next rep. Take this drinks can for an example of inhalation and how it can affect intra-abdominal pressure. With a diaphragm full of air, you will be braced and tight to perform the lift efficiently. Without this, you will sacrifice strength due to not being tight and stable. If you need to take a brief pause during your set, opt to do this at the top of the movement when locked out. Pausing when the bar is at the clavicle will take more energy out of you. If this is your first time performing a military press, start with the bar alone and select weight based on difficulty. The second compound lift to focus on is the seated dumbbell press. The same principle here as the military press, but just in a seated position. Imagine you are holding the bar across your clavicle again. This should result in the dumbbells being in line with your ears, and this is the ideal starting position. Keep the back straight against the bench, and again, drive to the point your biceps are by your ears. There are a few different movement paths we can do for the dumbbell shoulder press. I would avoid the elbows flaring out behind the body as shown, as this can put the shoulder joint in a vulnerable position and will increase the risk of injury. My preference for myself or clients is having hands just in front of the shoulders and following the movement pattern shown here. This will usually lead to a stronger lift due to a better and more stable path. Another alternative is this neutral grip. Your palms will be facing each other. This may be better for those who get discomfort during the version we've just looked at or lack the mobility to do them just yet. Note that this version of the press will produce more front head engagement and less rear. The dumbbell shoulder press can also be performed without a back support for those looking for more core engagement, but you'll be sacrificing weight as the movement becomes harder to control. A benefit of using dumbbells is that the press becomes a unilateral movement, meaning each side of the body is working its own weight load. This is great for building symmetry and strength and muscle appearance, eventually cancelling out any muscular imbalances. For both of these compound lifts, you should include at least 3 to 4 sets of each weekly in your training program at a rep range of 8 to 10. This is more than enough volume to grow your delts when performed with progressive overload as your aim. This means when 10 reps becomes doable, try and increase the weight for a set of 8. If you cannot quite get that, push the previous weight, but go past 10 for a set of 11 to 12. This will help you eventually achieve 8 reps of the next heavier weight. Repeat this pattern gradually moving up through the weights. In addition to these compound movements, it is imperative that you give extra focus to the middle head of the shoulders, commonly known as the side delt. This is the muscle responsible for giving that 3D-like cap-looking delt, as when looked head-on, it noticeably protrudes from the physique, ultimately giving that wide frame look. So to target this muscle specifically, we can perform the side lateral raise in various forms. Unlike with the overhead pressing movements, we only have one small muscle working here, and it's the only muscle we want involved. Firstly, we're looking at performing the side lateral raise lighter and slower, focusing on my muscle connection. This one is all about control, maintaining a slow tempo, activating the slow twitch fibers in the side delt. We'll be using very light weights here as we are completely isolating the middle head. When you reach the top of the movement, briefly pause and allow the contraction. To maximize tension and muscle fiber activation, try to stop the weight from touching your thighs. The muscle will lose tension if relaxed at the bottom of the movement. By keeping tension throughout, we are applying more stress to the muscle fibers, ultimately causing more tissue breakdown, leading to muscle growth. A tip here to fully isolate the muscle is to take a very light grip on the dumbbell. This will force the medial head of the shoulder to do the work and not the tricep muscles. Aim to get your shoulder higher than the dumbbell at the end point of the movement. This ensures a full range of motion and maximum muscle contraction, which is what we need to do to break down the fibers and have them rebuild bigger. A thought to help with this movement is to imagine you are pouring out a glass of water at the top. This will result in your pinky finger facing upwards. If you find yourself struggling to isolate the muscle, try the seated variation. This removes all temptation to swing and get help from other muscles. Aim for a tempo of 1 second up, a 1 second hold, and 2 seconds on the way down, with a set of 10 to 12 reps. This will mean 45 to 50 seconds of work, and your shoulders will be on fire. The aim here is to make a very light weight extremely challenging. I'm using 6 kilogram dumbbells here, which is just over 13 pounds, and it's more than enough weight for me for the 10 to 12 rep range. Right, let's flip this around. We're now looking at incorporating lateral raises in their heavier form. Muscles respond best to all kinds of stimulus, not just one tempo or rep range. So, to maximize shoulder development, we also need to hit the fast twitch fibers through heavier, more explosive side raises. Form is not going to be as strict here, as we're aiming for almost doubling the weight. Although this is technically an isolation movement, targeting one muscle, it's inevitable to get a small amount of swing going on. So don't worry too much as long as the weight is moving and you're still maintaining a good range of motion. You won't be able to hold the contraction as long at the top, and it will be challenging to maintain tension, particularly towards the end of the set. But don't worry, this is already covered through the slow controlled variation. The focus here is to be explosive and operate heavy weight load through the side delts. I'm using 12 kilograms here, which is double the weight I was using for my strict form raises, and you should be aiming for 8 to 10 reps this time. Use this as a reference when trying to select your weights. So, as mentioned earlier, there's one massively overlooked element of the wide delt illusion that is not related to shoulder size whatsoever. This is how lean you are. A leaner physique will naturally have a tighter waist look, and this makes the shoulders pop out more prominently due to the V taper shape. If your waist to shoulder ratio is too close, it's unlikely you'll have that wide delt look you're after. So, that being said, you should look to get your body fat below that 12% range to really see those delts pop out. Not only will they be perceived wider at a lower body fat percentage, but the muscles will also be more chiseled and visible, producing the more rounded capped look. To maximize the growth of your side delts, I'd recommend hitting both lateral raise variants twice per week, with 2 to 3 days rest in between. This means you've activated both slow and fast twitch fibers through controlled, isolated movement with the lighter dumbbells and the more explosive movement patterns using the heavier dumbbells. Perform the compound movements we looked at earlier at least once per week. But if you really want to grow them delts, hit those twice also. Combine this with sufficient calories and protein intake and watch those delts grow. And remember, the leaner you are, the wider those delts will look. If you need help leaning up, hit the link to our video on dropping body fat fast. Subscribe or drop a like if you've learned something new. Catch you on the next one.